The idea behind this theory is that people who've been abducted or kidnapped, in most cases kids, are forced by their kidnappers to undergo plastic surgeries by underground plastic surgeons. The purpose of these surgeries is to change the kids' appearances. Doing this makes it almost impossible for them to be found, and the kidnappers don't have to worry about them being connected to missing persons cases. This theory could provide a possible explanation for the amount of kids who've gone missing, but have never been found. If the kids were to have a different appearance, then it would be hard for their families to identify them. Others claim that the theory instead talks about off-the-grid plastic surgery clinics, where the rich people go to extensively alter their appearance, as a way to escape their current life and social circles for whatever reason, making them vanish almost without a trace. The theory could also further be expanded upon, with claims that these underground clinics are used by the rich to perform things like bizarre body modifications on willing or unwilling victims, and that in some cases, these victims have escaped and attempted to expose them. RuneScape is a popular MMORPG. As such, there have been many conspiracy theories related to the game. One such absurd theory claims that the people in certain areas of NYC are being controlled by in-game players in RuneScape, and that New York City is an experimental zone, testing the digital control of populations. An Anon on 4chan alleged that he had heard this theory through another Anon. Allegedly, the Anon created network models tracking the interactions and social patterns of thousands of players across different MMORPGs, including RuneScape. After doing cross-comparisons of the different servers he'd mapped, he found that how the players interacted across the different servers were fairly similar, all except for one server. In that specific server, instead of interacting with different random players, the users would interact almost exclusively with the same small group of players. Anon would use similar mapping methods to map the social patterns and interactions of residential areas in New York. What Anon discovered was that the data he'd retrieved from the residential areas synced up perfectly with those in the specific RuneScape server, if certain translations from real life to the game were made, wherein, for example, going to work in real life meant grinding in-game. The distances traveled and travel routines also synced up. Anon did more tests on different RuneScape servers, cross-analyzing them with random residential areas from the New York data he'd gathered. He discovered that the data from these servers also linked up with New York in certain places. He tried using the data for different American cities and comparing it with other servers across several MMORPGs. However, none showed the same results. Anon then came to the conclusion that somehow, real-life people were being controlled by players in RuneScape. Another variation of the theory is extremely similar to the one mentioned before, with a few differences. In this theory, it was rumored that a group of sociologists were examining different RuneScape servers, trying to learn how players interacted with each other in-game, things like trading and socializing, to understand human behavior. Most of the servers had pretty consistent patterns with no real routine. One server, however, was the outlier. The players on the server worked on an almost 16-hour cycle, associating closely with only a few other players, and always logged in and out at the same time. The players would almost always stay confined within the large cities, and perform one or two activities each. One sociologist from the team noticed that the data from the players was consistent with that gathered from people who were studying in NYC, almost mirroring each other. So the conspiracy theory goes that some government agency, whether the CIA or something else, was using real surveillance data to recreate the real lives of people in NYC in the game, or that the player characters were some form of advanced AI, able to accurately predict and mimic real human behavior from the data gathered from NYC for some form of study or surveillance. Writer Gianfranco degli Esposti mentions that reports in the time of the plague between 1347 and 1350 speak of cigar-shaped objects slowly crossing the sky, sometimes at low altitudes, dispersing in their passage a disturbing mist. He attributes the Black Plague to these objects, because immediately after these events, the epidemic exploded in that area. A huge mass of vapors appeared from the sky in Florence coming from the north, and spread throughout the area. From the east, in the same year, many animals fell from the sky, their decomposing carcasses causing the spread of a plague. There are no other documents or reports other than those written by Gianfranco regarding this specific theory. Another outlandish theory is the mud floods theory. According to this theory, in the 18th or 19th century, a worldwide mud flood occurred which wiped out entire civilizations and covered entire cities. One such civilization which was thought to be wiped out was that of Tartary. According to this theory, Tartary was a culturally and technologically advanced empire that spread throughout most of the world, and was responsible for most of the older and more impressive buildings that exist today. Things like the Great Pyramids, Notre Dame, and other structures couldn't have been built without advanced technology or knowledge possessed by the Tartarian Empire before its downfall. Supposedly, humans are now simply living in the remnants of the buildings left behind by this empire, after digging them up from the mud. The evidence provided by people who believe this theory is that many buildings around the world have windows and doors submerged underground, meaning that they weren't fully excavated. They also claim that there are various architectural similarities between buildings around the world, meaning they all belong to that civilization. The existence of the Tartarian Empire was, according to them, deliberately erased from history by the elites that rule the world. On a thread titled Deep Sea Thread on 4chan's Paranormal Board, an anon replied with this: "There are modified humans working on oil rigs in the abyssal zones of the deep sea. I've seen them. No one is meant to talk about it. They live in mechanical shells like barnacles. Inside, their body is just a blob with limbs that pop out to fix lines and do tasks. They have been bioengineered to live under there, to withstand the immense pressure of the deep sea. No one is supposed to talk about it, but we've all seen it. Considering the dangers of working on deep-sea oil rigs, not everyone would be willing to risk their lives for such a job, so having humans modified specifically for performing such tasks underwater puts them above normal humans. However, there's not much to go off of since Anon didn't really provide specific details, or at least proper images regarding his proposed theory. Another Anon proposed a slightly different theory, that instead of modified humans, there are creatures deep underwater that have evolved on their own, to resemble humans. These creatures are attracted to the noise made by the pipes, seeking out another sentient creature to make contact with. There's so much we don't know about the deep sea. With the amount of reported sightings of strange creatures underwater, it wouldn't be surprising for there to be a creature living in the deep sea that bears resemblance to humans."